What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, Joker back again, once again. And welcome to my progression slash gameplay part of my review for Warmind. If you want my story thoughts, the link to that video will be in the description below. For all the improvements that people may think Warmind has made, Warmind still continues the problem that Destiny 2 has with player engagement versus grind versus time feeling like it's valued versus reward versus imbalance. Look at this. This Nightfall is 270 and gives powerful gear. Look at this heroic strike. It is 350 and gives blues. Well, I guess it's better than greens, because if it was greens then I would die or something. In the time that it would take me to run 3 strikes, especially if I don't skip Exodus Crash Site because I'm insane or something, I could run the Nightfall, I could probably run a raid, and I could probably be well into my public event milestone. In Warmind, and in Destiny 2, the player's ability to level up is not tied to their ability to progress. This is something I've complained about so many times it really feels like I'm repeating myself. But it's even more egregious in Warmind. Now it's all tied to weekly milestones. You knock them out and you're well done. And mind you, the basic milestones probably take no more than 2 to 3 hours for the average player. You know, the people who are going to get on with their buddies and just, tear through it in a couple of hours. Light leveling in Destiny has always been this artificially superfluous thing that just exists since Destiny 1. However, in Destiny 2, and more so in Destiny 2 Warmind, they seem to have figured out how to turn that into not a vertical climb or not something that was just there to make sure that you continued and played through the campaign before you went on to the endgame activities, but they've turned it into a wall. At any given time, there is a quantitative amount of progression you can make. This progression is further hindered if you have multiple of the same character class, as the second character class does not qualify for powerful gear after the first character class has gotten it as of Warmind. This DLC runs into the problem of why am I even bothering to log in, for me at least, much quicker than Destiny 2 and Destiny 2 The Curse of Osiris did. Why? Because weekly milestones. Once you have knocked out all the weekly milestones, more so down the line when you've knocked out whatever exotic masterworks you want, and you've knocked out whatever exotic quests you want and collected all the nodes that you care about. Because I think the thrill of opening a chest and getting a handful of blues and some shaders is really going to wear thin really quickly on a lot of people. So I don't really believe that these collectibles, air quote collectibles, are really a long-term answer. This isn't like the Grimoire where you actually got something for collecting these things. Now, while some may look at this wall and see it as a good thing, and herald 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, while some of you may look at this wall and herald it as a good change because it stops progressing to max level within the first week of the DLC, you're kind of missing the point. Level doesn't matter. Gearing does. Destiny 2 has done little to change its gearing system since launch. It is still just as bad, with some minor tweaks in the system to stop the acquisition of duplicate exotics. So now, not only are you time-gated in your progression, but you have very little auxiliary grind after you're time-gated. Skillup displayed it best with this graph. In Destiny 1, you could hit the max level cap and still have some level of auxiliary progression. You could quest to get better gear. You could quest to get tier 12 armor. You could quest to get a Grasp of Moloch or an Eye of Selûne or a Gom. Once you hit max level in Destiny 1, that was the start of the game. In Destiny 2, it seems to be where it pitters out. We know that this type of auxiliary progression works because there was a year without content and people still had shit to do. Destiny 2 took an axis away on the way that players progress, making it a more controlled but linear progression system. With Warmind, we see that linear progression system has been further cut in half. It's all milestones and raids. That's it.
But Joker, I I can now grind. I had to shoot 700 scions to do one step in a quest to get the sleeper stimulant.
I hear you say with your shrill, tremulous voice. In Warmind, Bungie brought back a handful of grindy collectible quests. However, this isn't a fix. In fact, it's a microcosm of the exact problems that Destiny 2 faces. As what happens when you inevitably grind that sleeper? Because you'll never be allowed to step foot in a raid without it. Oh, wait, once you grind it out so you can play the endgame activities because it will be required of you, there's no more grind. In Destiny 1, you could grind out the sleeper, and it was a much better quest in my opinion. And then you could go grind out a Grasp of Moloch, an Imago Loop, an Iasa Luna, your tier 12 gear. The sleeper was just one part of that quest, it wasn't the quest. All of that said, we can wax on and 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 on about power and leveling and grind all day long. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, it's still all rather pointless. And that's not me being nihilistic in this everything is pointless kind of way, or even in a Destiny is just gonna start over from scratch and we're gonna lose all our stuff again when Destiny 3 comes out kind of way. It's pointless because what exactly are we grinding for? What are we logging in to accomplish every week? What is the carrot on the stick? For most people, you would assume that it would be the ability to complete the endgame activities. Except, there's virtually no raid loot. The armor isn't all that better than what you already have, certainly not in my opinion, especially when it comes to aesthetic. And why would I care all that much about a buff that allows me to complete the raid easier if the only reward for doing the raid is the armor that gave me the buffs to complete the raid easier to get a sidearm and a fusion rifle? And the sidearm is not Last Hope, and the fusion rifle is, well, it's not a lot of things. In Destiny 1, even with the smaller raids, even with the Prison of Elders, you would see an entirely new fleshed out loot pool for every new PvE endgame activity. With Leviathan, they made one set of weapons and pieced it out over the entirety of the raid. This isn't Destiny 1, where you would load up Vault of Glass because you wanted to get Fatebringer, or Praetorian Foil, or Praedyth's Revenge, or Vex Mythoclast, or that sweet tier 12 Vogue armor. This isn't even Crota's End, where you log in to get Black Hammer, or Swordbreaker, or Hunger of Crota, or Wrath of the Machine, where basically every weapon in that raid was really decent. No, with the current raid layer, it's one shitty sidearm that's not Last Hope, and one really shitty fusion rifle that's not the main ingredient, this Amalon FR4 god tier weapon of sniping, and I mean, at the end of the day, if it's not those two fusion rifles, it doesn't matter because it's not Sins of the Past, Wardcliff Coil, the Sleeper Simulant, or PvP's favorite child, the Colony. And for anyone who thinks I'm being too harsh, I actually find this to be an incredible shame. I think I mentioned this earlier, because Spire of Stars consists of some of the best raid mechanics since Taken King. But you gotta have your carrot with your stick, man. And in a looter shooter, the progression, the earning the toys, is just as important as what you're playing, if not more. With Warmind, Destiny 2 did take a step forward in terms of systems. Look at the Exotic Catalyst system. Look at how interesting that could be. I mean, this is just a foundation of something, but it could be better. And I really do hope that it evolves into something that's more than just shoot 10 people in the head and then you get a Masterwork Exotic after, collecting it. I really want something that's more like Husk of the Pit or the Braytech weapon, where you get a baby version of the weapon and then you raise it and you take care of it and you evolve it into an exotic through a quest line. Kinda like a Pokemon. In fact, Bungie could learn a lot from playing a couple Pokemon games, especially where progression is concerned. But I digress, back to the evolving weapons. That sounds really fun and really cool, and I've enjoyed it just about every time they've done it in Destiny thus far. But getting back to systems, I mean, Heroic strikes are now harder. Yay! But the loot drops significantly below your level, making grinding for loot and heroic strikes pointless. Boo! The Spire of Stars raid is some of the most interesting raid content that we've gotten since Taken King. Yay! The rewards are some ugly armor that looks like it's mostly reskinned Eater of Worlds armor, and 2 shitty weapons. 1 shitty sidearm that's not Last Hope, and a shitty fusion rifle that's, well, not a number of ludicrously other better things. Escalation Protocol, which I haven't talked about yet, is the new Horde public event in the vein of Court of Oryx and Archon's Forge, with some really solid difficulty to it. Yay! However, it doesn't respect player investment or time. You have to manipulate the systems in order to get more than 3 people into an instance so that completing the event is even achievable, and being a public event in a world space means it will inevitably die the same death that Court of Oryx and Archon's Forge did. In fact, it seems to be kinda dead on arrival, as the very same difficulty that I just praised it for is also its biggest handicap, and it turns the average player who might be in the space off, more so when there's so much stuff that the player would rather be doing, especially with the different quests. You bring this together and you have the perfect storm of a really, really great idea that goes to shit, and proves that once again, something like a Horde mode needs its own dedicated playlist and matchmaking, just like Strikes, just like PvP. Horde mode good. Current implementation since forever has been bad. Make it its own playlist, just like Strikes, just like PvP. I see a lot of people praising Warmind for the system changes and the gameplay changes. And while everybody is certainly entitled to their opinion, I definitely exercise mine, I have to wonder, is it that these changes are actually good, or people just really want an excuse to jump back in and play more Destiny? You know, maybe recapture some of the glory days from Destiny 1. And this is a really important question to ask, because Bungie will keep doing things like they're doing them now if they think this is what we like and not what we're settling with. And I think it's a question that the community really needs to ask itself. I think Bungie has a handful of really great changes here, but it's so mired in shit that it doesn't matter how great some of these changes are, because for every step forward, there's 5 steps back. Warmind just does not respect player time and investment. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. And like always, stay frosty.